Please sit in a comfortable meditation posture and close the eyes. We'll put our attention on the silence that is always there deep in the mind. Connect with that silence. Become the silence. You are the silent witness. Now established in the silent witness, please listen to the words of the Yoga Vasishta. Book 4, Chapter 3, continuing with verse 4. The Supreme Being can have no mercy of the past, no memory of the past at the beginning of a new creation, because he has no prior birth or death. Therefore, this tree in the sky of memory has no relation to Brahma. Rama asked, doesn't the memory of the past continue in Brahma in his recreation of the world, like the former memory of men upon being reborn? Or are all past memories effaced from the minds of men by the delirium of death in their past lives? Vasishta replied, all intelligent beings, including Brahma, and all others of the past age who attain nirvana or extinction are, of course, absorbed in one Brahma. Now tell me, my good Brahma, where do these past memories and those with memories live when they are wholly lost at the final liberation of those with memories? It is certain that all beings are liberated and become extinct in Brahma at the great dissolution. Therefore, without the persons who remember, there cannot be memories of anything. The memory of itself that lives impressed in the empty space of individual intellects is truly the reservoir of the perceptible and imperceptible worlds. This memory is eternally present before the sight of God as a reflection of his own consciousness. It shines with the brightness of his self-consciousness from time without beginning and end, and is identical with this world, which is therefore termed self-born. The spiritual body, that is the attribute of God from time without beginning, is the same as the manifestation of himself exhibited in the form of the world or the microcosm. But the world is said to be composed of atoms, which compose the land and woods, the clouds, and the firmament. But there are no atoms to form time and space, actions and motions, or revolutions of days and nights. The atoms of matter that fill the world have other initial atoms of spirit, which are inherent in them and cause them to appear in the forms of mountains and the like. But these forms, seeming to be conglomeration of atomic particles and showing themselves to our vision as lighted objects, are in reality no substantial things. Thus, there is no end of the real and unreal sights of things. The real presents itself to the view of the learned, and the unreal to that of the unlearned. The cosmos appear as the immutable Brahma only to the intelligent, and as the mutable, visible world to the unintelligent. As these bright worlds appear to roll about like eggs in their spheres, so there are multitudes of other orbs shining in every atom in the universe. We see pillars carved with figures upon figures upon figures. In the same way, the grand pillar of the universe is composed of systems under systems to no end. As sand on a rock is attached but separable to it. And the grains are countless in number. So the orbs of the three worlds are like dust particles in the mountainous body of Brahma. It may be possible to count the particles of ray scattered in sunbeams, but it is impossible to number the atoms of light emanating from the great sun of Brahma. As the sun scatters his light particles on the sparkling waters and sands of the sea, so does the intellect of God disperse the atoms of its light all over the emptiness of the universe. As the notion of emptiness fills the mind with the idea of the visible life, so the thought of creation, which is identical to Brahma, gives us the notion of his intellectual sphere. To understand the creation as something different from Brahma separates man from him. But to take creation as synonymous with Brahma leads him to his joy. The enlightened soul, free from its knowledge of the physical seed and knowing Brahma alone, as the fullness filling the vacuum of intellect, knows the knowable in his upward understanding as being the same as what has proceeded from him. Chapter 4, the world exists in the mind. Vasishtha said, overthrow the battery of the physical senses supplies us with a bridge over the ocean of the world. There is no other act whereby we may cross over it. Acquaintance with the scriptures, association with the good and wise, and practice of the virtues are the means whereby a rational and self-controlled man may come to know the absolute negation of phenomena. So here Vasishtha is giving us an instruction how to achieve moksha. When one comes to know the absolute negation of phenomena, that's another definition for moksha. The way to accomplish that is acquaintance with the scriptures. That's the first item given. And what does that give us? And what is the value of acquaintance with the scriptures? Well, the scriptures are expressions of the divine karmic traces. That's why they're so important. You see, what separates us from the experience of moksha are individual karmic traces. And individual karmic traces are, by their very definition, opposite of divine karmic traces. That is how individual karmic traces actually arise, isn't it? They arise by doing things, by performing acts that are in opposition to the divine karmic traces, creating a discordant effect in the universe known as individual karmic traces. So by becoming familiar with divine karmic traces, we're bringing into awareness the frequencies that will balance individual karmic traces. In fact, the whole body of the Vedic literature, Veda means knowledge. The whole body of Vedic literature is an expression of divine karmic traces. So we can study and become aware of the content of any aspect of the Vedic literature, and that will have an effect of balancing some individual karmic traces, but only will be permanent if we're established in the silent witness while we're exposed to these marvelous frequencies of the divine karmic traces. And why is that? Because the root of individual karmic traces exists in the unconscious mind. And if they are not balanced at that level, they simply grow back like weeds that have been cut off at the level of the ground and not extracted with their root. So we see, for example, Vedic pundits chanting perfectly the Vedas. And then after chanting the Vedas, they resume their normal life, and they have not achieved the moksha. They have worries and cares and fears and doubts. How is this possible? They have not been established in the silent witness while chanting the Vedic scriptures. So they need to understand this one important step. This is why we are listening to Yoga Vasishta right now, while established in the silent witness. By doing that, our awareness is beyond the level of the root of the individual karmic traces. So the individual karmic traces can be balanced by this action of becoming acquainted with the scriptures. Then we're told association with the good and wise. Why is that important? That is literally the foundation of the communities being created by the Goloka project right now. It is one of the steps necessary for achieving moksha. The communities are not just some frivolous, luxurious, optional feature of human society. They're required. It is necessary to achieve moksha, to be in the company of the good and wise. The Goloka communities are your opportunity for association with others who are also on the path. How does this work? Why does it that being in a Goloka community will be of great benefit and one of the three means for achieving moksha? This is due to what Maharishi called the super radiance effect. He also called it the group dynamics of consciousness. We have been calling it the emergence effect. Quite literally, being in community of sufficient size, and about 300 people is the minimum size, will result in a new level of collective consciousness forming that is far superior and greater than the individual consciousnesses of the members of the community. That's called the emergence effect or superradiance effect. So while you're living in one of these marvelous communities of the enlightened, you are enlightened. Like living in a room filled with light. There's light all around. There is no darkness. And so this is going to uplift your individual consciousness to a higher level of consciousness, just being in this group. With other individuals who are striving to achieve the same thing. Maybe by measuring the level of consciousness of the members of the community before they join the community, we'll probably find, and this is something we'll want to do, that their level of consciousness is 350, 400, 450, maybe 500. But after the community forms, and there are at least 300 people in the community, we can do the level of consciousness survey again, each person. And they will be delighted and surprised to find their level of consciousness is 600 or higher. And when they leave the community, should they leave after a little time, they take the survey again, it will be back to the former level, perhaps a little higher. So this is a study that we'll want to conduct as our communities are forming, just to prove and establish this emergence effect. And finally, the third is the practice of the virtues. What is the practice of the virtues? Well, it's a practice. That means it's directed thought. It's something that is done consciously. The virtues are also equivalent with divine karmic traces, or even beyond. So the practice of the virtues is literally our meditation program. Dharana with a special Sri Vidya mantra, balancing karmic traces, Samyama on various significant sutras, balancing karmic traces. All of this works together. Now let's continue, established in the silent witness. And begin the practice of Dharana. and Trimana Samyama. Allowing these wonderful frequencies and techniques to polish off the balancing of individual karmic traces that have been touched and enlivened at the readings today. figure it out.